Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists episode 572. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
And my name is Zach.
And we're here to talk about movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. Happy March, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I've ever had somebody welcome me to March.
Well, you don't really have seasons in Florida, so.
Oh, you mean?
Sure we do.
We have seasons. The hot
Okay,
We don't
season.
have seasons.
Do you have big swings in seasons?
Yeah. They just don't
so
last
it goes
very
from
long.
like, you have a transition from like -20 and snowy to then into 80s and humid.
No, it's more like 90% of the year it's hot,
Okay.
and then 10% of the year it's cold. That's the
Cold
swing.
or less hot?
No, cold. I would say cold. Wouldn't you say, Zach? It gets cold. Not
It gets
like
cold.
not Minnesota cold, but cold.
No.
Yeah, define cold.
40s.
Yeah.
Oh, 40 sounds wonderful.
This year we had freezes like maybe 4 or 5 nights over the course of winter.
A whole 4 or 5 nights of freezes.
Oh,
Yeah.
so I see what's happening. Kyle has lost his objectivity
Yes.
because he lives in a frigid climate. So he can't recognize that frost and 40 degrees are an accurate reflection of cold.
Right. I feel like cold and hot, for the most part, are relative, depending on what you're used to. And if you're used to normally to be 90s and 80s, 40s is a pretty big swing. I recognize that.
Kyle's gatekeeping the weather for some
Yeah. No, you guys don't know what real seasons are.
I do. I
No,
do.
Zach, you do. You get a pass. James, I'm still, jury's still out on you.
Okay. Fair enough. I accept that.
Well, I'm excited for March because for me, March means winter is leaving and spring is knocking at that door.
Oh, man. Don't get your hopes up.
Okay.
Oh, I understand what Wisconsin spring looks like. I'm just saying overall, the overall trend is towards something warmer and sunnier and brighter.
Well, I'm also excited for March because of the madness. I just can't wait for that big tournament everybody talks about. It's my favorite time of the year.
James will not shut up about college basketball when we're not on air.
know,
That's all.
I know.
I would say if I could boil James down into 2 things, it'd be movies and college sports.
Sports. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's my only interest, I would say.
James, I know you've been working on your bracket already, so give me a quick rundown. Who are like your playing teams? Who's making to the Elite Eight?
Oh, I really like the Gladiators and
Oh, the Gladiators, yeah.
the Buttercups and the Lakers. I like all those college teams.
Yeah, that's great.
I really think this is Shaq's year with the Lakers to get that NCAA championship.
Absolutely. I mean, he's just he's a good player. He deserves it. Welcome to the podcast. As Kyle mentioned, this is episode 572. We appreciate you being here and clicking play on this video and or audio podcast. We're going to talk women talking today and also play a related game. Last episode, you guys brought games to the podcast. And so I decided it was my turn to bring a game to the podcast that these guys don't even know what we're going to play. And boy, are they in for it. I'm looking forward to putting the screws to them with the game I brought. Speaking of putting the screws to people, before we get into women talking, that was a weird transition.
Yeah.
Before we talk women talking,
I feel like this episode is just going to be James over and over saying things that I'm embarrassed by him saying.
I'm not sure. That was not on purpose. It's just
Can we put a
after I
disclaimer
said
for
it.
James at the beginning of the podcast?
Sure. After I said it, I was like, that was, yeah. Anyway, if there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube, go check it out. Type Cinereelists, REEL with an S on the end, and you'll find us there. Click play and watch while you listen. You could also find us on Patreon at patreon.com/Cinereelists. Support the podcast, get extra after show audio, amongst other Cinerealist swag. You could also leave us an Apple Podcast review. That's free and easy to do. Just give us 5 stars, maybe leave a little bit of text. If you leave some text, we'll probably discuss it on the podcast. So make it good. And also, you could send us a listener email to heyguys@cinereelist.com. Send a comment, a question, a list suggestion, a movie suggestion, any of those kinds of things. Send us via email and we will discuss it on the show. Do we need to say anything else before we jump into the movie for this week?
I think you covered it all.
All right. The men are silent, so it's time to talk women. It's Women Talking, which is on VOD right now, and in theory, soon to be released on Amazon Prime. Here's a clip.
What if the men who are in prison are not guilty?
Mother,
Oh, child.
why are you asking if
Jude,
they're...
shush.
We caught one of them. I saw him.
But only one. Yes, only one, but he named the others.
But what if he was lying? We must consider this.
No. No, that is not our responsibility because we aren't in charge of whether or not they are punished. We know that we've been attacked by men, not by ghosts or Satan, as we were led to believe for so long. We know that we've not imagined these attacks, that we were made unconscious with cow tranquilizer. We know that we are bruised and infected and pregnant and terrified and insane, and some of us are dead. We know that we must protect our children regardless of who is guilty.
That was Women Talking, a 2022 American drama film written and directed by Sarah Polley, based on a 2018 novel of the same name. The movie stars Rooney Mara, Claire Foy, Jessie Buckley, Judith Ivey, Ben Whishaw, and Frances McDormand, amongst others. And the official IMDb plot synopsis for Women Talking is: do nothing, stay and fight, or leave. In 2010, the women of an isolated religious community grapple with reconciling a brutal reality with their faith. That's a pretty good description. That's like a marketing company wrote that description, but they did a good job at like getting to the meat of what's going on here, I would say.
Yeah.
They definitely included the tagline in the description for the plot.
Right. But the tagline happens to like very accurately describe the dilemma of the film.
Right.
So sometimes taglines are more like, this is about the movie, but it's more about getting butts in seats. In this instance, I think they're just setting up the premise very well, even though it's the tagline. So yeah, Women Talking. This is an Oscar-nominated movie. I don't remember what they've been nominated for.
Best Picture for
remember?
sure.
They
Right.
might just maybe adapt a screenplay, but definitely Best Picture.
Okay. And it's one that I was looking forward to as a movie that was very well regarded at the end of last year. And so the first opportunity to see it, I did and thought it might be an interesting movie to talk about with these guys. So I'm curious to know what you guys thought about Women Talking.
Kyle?
So I'm happy to report that I found a Jessie Buckley movie I like or enjoyed watching,
That's-
if however you want to put it.
Oh, finally.
That's true. You've been very vocal that you don't give a crap about Jessie Buckley.
No, so here's the thing. It's never been Jessie Buckley that's been the problem in the movie that I've watched. It's always just been the movie itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like the things that she picks, but she's never the reason why I don't like the movie.
Yeah.
And
It's like a
also
reverse.
and also
It's
you
a reverse
haven't
Julianne Moore. Yeah.
You haven't watched
Yeah.
the good Jessie Buckley movies on top of that.
Wild Rose. No, I've not watched that one.
Okay.
But this is another good Jessie Buckley movie
Sure.
that I am glad that I saw. I mean, it's definitely a tough movie. It deals with sexual assault and women who have to make a very quick and quick and rush decision about how they're going to respond, what they're going to do, what their agency is to these assaults that have been done to them by the men of this community. And it feels a bit like a play in the sense where this movie mostly takes place in the roof of a barn, like the attic of a barn, where these group of women are sort of speaking for the whole community, and they're trying to decide, do we forgive, do we fight, or do we run? Like, how do we respond to this terrible situation? And I've found those discussions they had very fascinating, very engaging. Like, this is a talking movie for sure, which I also appreciate that this movie lets you know what's going on and shows maybe some of the after effects of the assaults, but you never witness any assault. It never goes there, which I think for a lot of people could be upsetting to watch. So there's definitely upsetting things to see in this movie, but I appreciate the fact that it never had to fully go there to get its point across.
Yeah, I also liked how even the aftermath stuff came later, when it was kind of setting the stage for just how serious what they're talking about is.
Right. Yeah. And to show how many women this affected in the community. It wasn't like, oh, it happened to a couple. It seemed like nearly every woman had an experience of being assaulted by various men within this community. So I definitely, I was pretty riveted by this movie. I was hanging on to it. What do you think, Zach?
Well, I'm glad you feel that way, Kyle. I wasn't sure what your reaction would be, because I don't know in general how you feel about these kind of like one room, very talky kind of play on film kind of films. But I really like that. I tend to gravitate towards movies like that, where it's just like really interesting, well-written dialogue between characters in a room. And this movie I thought was great. I found it super interesting, super hard. I mean, I felt so much empathy for these characters, and then realizing this is based on a book that itself was based on a true story that happened in Bolivia, very similar circumstances. It's just, so much empathy for these women who themselves stand in as like surrogates for like lots of women, So I thought the movie did an awesome job of introducing tons of characters with different motivations, different personalities, different temperaments. And I thought the dialogue was strange enough to be very intriguing. Like their thought patterns and ways that they would express things are unusual some of the time, in a way that just kind of like perks your ears up and keeps you invested. Even though the colors are very muted and the locations are very slight, I liked there's this one male character in it. And I thought he was a great character and a great acting performance as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed this film quite a bit.
And Zach, to kind of respond to your first point about whether I would enjoy this or not, this movie at times reminded me of a courtroom drama, not so much in the like actual topic, but just sort of in the presentation, where you had different characters making their arguments and debating the decisions and what's the right thing to do. And if you believe this, does it also mean you believe that? And I love a courtroom drama. And this gave me similar vibes to that.
It was like a 12 Angry Men kind of thing.
12 Angry Women, I think we can call this.
Yeah.
I don't think there was 12 of them, maybe 8 or so, but sure. I mean, that's the direct comparison I have in my brain is 12 Angry Men. It's people in a room litigating something, right? Trying to come to a decision when they all have their own perspectives and their own ideas of what justice means. And I really appreciated just the way that Women Talking tells the story by keeping it small and not really going outside of the barn too much. And it totally reminded me of 12 Angry Men, which is, top 100 movie for me. I think it's a top 25 movie for me. And so while I don't think Women Talking quite gets there as well as 12 Angry Men does, I also have had 2 weeks with Women Talking, whereas 12 Angry Men I remember watching when I was like 19 and being blown away by it. So maybe with time it could. I also really appreciated the way the movie applies a different culture to some of these very hard topics. The idea that religion has participated in the abuse of women over time, and women coming to the realization of it. There's also like a little bit of a mystery behind the film that I don't know if it's a spoiler or not. What's your opinion on the time and setting and whether that's a spoiler?
Well,
I don't think it's a spoiler.
It
It's not the
establishes
village.
Okay.
Right. Like for sure at the beginning, Megan and I were trying to figure out when does this take place. And we were looking at like their clothing and their shoes. And then it's pretty clear halfway through the movie. They tell you what era this takes place in. And I believe the plot description you read also gives a year or two.
Did it? I don't think it did.
Maybe not.
100%. It says in 2010.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
But
good. Then we can talk about that.
When you start watching the movie, it's kind of hard to place it because this is this conservative Mennonite village. They don't have electricity. They use barns and they're,
and buggies, not cars.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So, but eventually they pretty much make it clear it's 2010.
Yeah. It even gives you clues about the fact that they're south of the equator, that they're separatistic enough that they've gone south because they determine direction by the Southern Cross.
Well, good point.
Which you can't really see in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that at the time. But that's obviously I remember that discussion.
Yeah.
But I didn't pick up, they must be in the Southern Hemisphere because they see the Southern Cross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they really are kind of isolated from anything that they might have been familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
Even had they been familiar with it.
Yeah, it was strange for me watching this movie as well, just from like a personal perspective, because my grandmother was Mennonite and her family on my dad's side was Mennonite, and they definitely had like very strict rules against things while they weren't living in barns on. Well, they did live in a farm, but they weren't living in like a society where they weren't driving cars and things like that. They definitely did not allow dancing, and men and women had their places to be within that culture, and you weren't allowed to watch fiction things. You weren't allowed to watch like TV shows that were made up. You could watch news and sports, and that's it, type of thing, because anything that man made up could possibly have devil tones in it and things like that. So she grew up in that world, and then she gave up some of that as she got older and got married and had her own kids, but some of it she held on to and tried to enforce on her own kids, all of which rejected it, and but all of which grew up to be religious people with their own opinions on their upbringing and what they were going to pass on to their kids. And I think that conversation they had, like my parents and at least my dad and his brothers had over time, they probably didn't even recognize it as a conversation, but they obviously had some kind of thought process on what they were going to keep from their upbringing and what they weren't. And then they chose what to pass on to their kids, my generation. And the idea that there are people today living in cultures like that have held on to those very strict beliefs, and yet in 2010 are reevaluating what they actually believe, whether they believe certain things are actually from God, or if those are things that have been use to exploit. I just find all that conversation interesting from like a religion perspective, especially just not knowing much about the Mennonite church and growing up hearing these things about my grandmother and her experiences and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. And for me, what I think of first when I think of Mennonites is pacifism.
Mhm.
Like for me, they're the denomination that is very, very interwoven with the ideas of pacifism. And I found that interesting watching this movie, you know, because what they're debating is to stay and fight. That's the word that they use, fight, or to leave. And both of those for them is in tension with their ideas of salvation, right? So to stay and fight for something like fighting, or really, I mean, the undercurrent is like the violence done to them would be very anti-Mennonite, you know, but like to stay and fight is kind of a non-passive, you know, pacifistic way to talk about it. Or then to leave, they felt like their community was their only path to salvation, and so that they'd be foregoing, you know, being forgiven of their sins by leaving, you know, the community. And so it was really like a big tension that they're dealing with, right? Even stronger tension in that aspect. So I found that very interesting. I've always been fascinated by the Mennonites.
Yeah. There was this really interesting discussion on the nature of forgiveness too, because when the women find out what these men are doing, the elders tell them, okay, well, forgive these men and let's move on. That was kind of the commands to them. And they were talking like, if you are forced to forgive, is it true forgiveness? Or if we leave, can we forgive over time? And like, can we come to
actually
terms with
forgive?
Right. Can we actually forgive? Can we come to terms with what happened? Can we maybe return, you know, with a different mindset over time? And I just thought that back and forth, that debate was fascinating. Also, their openness to like, maybe we can, like, if these spiritual leaders are lying to us, we can find new spiritual leaders who have similar beliefs to us, and almost like, can we form a new religion out of this? Right. So you're right. They seemed, there just were these fascinating conversations, not just of should we stay or should we go, but what does it mean to stay? What does it mean to leave?
Yeah, I also found the opening card interesting. The idea that this movie is based on something that happened, but also the conversations are dreamt up, I would say, or created from a modern perspective, right? The person who wrote the book was not in the room with these women when they were making this decision. In fact, there's no proof they even made this decision. From what I understand, they testified in court against their attackers. So,
and I think their attackers went to jail.
Yeah. So it's very different outcome than what this movie proposes. But I do like the idea of using something that happened, the impetus of something that happened, as a basis to open a conversation. And I think that's the most interesting thing about the movie, is seeing people conversate in a very specific place, with very specific viewpoints that most modern people don't really think about on a day-to-day basis, but that are also universal. Like the idea of forgiving because it's the right thing to do versus forgiving because you actually forgive somebody is something that anybody can think about, right?
Right, yeah.
Or at what point, forgiveness or not, is it time to go? Like that's another thing to think about. There's just a lot of things, both in the situation that the movie brings to you, but also like you can apply, is it time to go, that question to all kinds of life situations, because sometimes it's just time to go and you can worry about forgiveness later. And I liked all that on top of just all the questions and all that. Everybody in this movie just kills it to me. Like all the acting, even Frances McDormand, who's very not
barely in the movie,
but she's barely in the movie, but
yeah,
she wasn't distracting. I've seen Sarah Polley in a lot of I've seen a lot of these people in a lot of things, and yet it was very easy 20 minutes in to not think about all those other things they've been in and just accept that they're just a character in this barn.
Did Sarah Polley play a character in this movie too, or was she just behind the camera?
I think she was just behind the camera.
Okay.
I'm confusing her
Okay.
with somebody else.
Yeah.
That name.
But I've seen her in things. She was in like Dawn of the Dead, I think.
She was in Run. Wasn't that the movie that we saw her most recently in?
I believe she was in.
Wasn't she the controlling mother in Run? I did not recognize Rooney Mara or Claire Foy.
Oh, really?
Until the very end, I saw their names. I was like, and I'd heard they've been in this movie. It's like, oh, of course. But yeah, like the whole time I was like, who? Obviously, Jessie Buckley I recognize, but those two, I was like, who are these actresses? And like, oh, they're people I know I've seen in other things before. But
I thought Rooney Mara was so good in this.
yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, same for Claire Foy. I thought all of them were really good. There's the whole cast, and even I would say the actresses whose names I don't know. Like there were some older women who were playing, who were in this movie, and I thought they were great too. And also bringing their perspective of being the elder generation who's been dealing with this their whole lives, and how are they going to respond to this situation, and to protect all their daughters and their granddaughters too.
I also
and
found
it
right. I also found it interesting that the main two older women, it becomes clear towards the end of the movie that they know the answer. You know what I mean? And they've known the answer, and they allowed this to play out, and for the rest of the younger women to come to the same conclusion that they've already known from the beginning. You know what I mean? And they were very patient in not telling the rest of the group, like, there's only one answer here, really. And I like that. And yeah, I mean, there's just everything about the presentation and the acting felt very realistic to me, and like a worthy exercise. Didn't feel contrived, or like I didn't feel preached to. And every decision, every argument, every just the whole thing felt genuine to me and earnest in a way that wasn't pretentious. And though that's really hard to pull off, I would say.
I think that word genuine is a really accurate description of this movie. And for all the reasons you said.
Yeah. So I did have one thing that was distracting to me that it's not a bad thing. But like, why did there have to be a dude? You know what I mean? I was like,
oh, you wish there was just no dude?
I mean, I don't know why the dude had to be there. It feels like you could have gotten a similar end result without.
Do we know in the true story if there was someone taking minutes? Was there a record? Was there a man who was there just to record the conversation?
I don't know.
From my understanding,
I don't even know if there was a conversation.
Yeah, from my understanding, there was no barn conversation.
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah,
pretty much everything but the premise of the problem is imagined.
I guess for me, what he represented, right, is if they're gonna stay and fight, right, what would they be fighting for? You know, and it's like, well, maybe we can have a society where the men are like this, you know, like we have to fight for something. And he represented like what if they stayed, and especially for Rooney Mara's character, right? Like what things could be if they stayed. What would things be like for Rooney Mara's character if she stayed? What would that be like for all the women if they won the fight and stayed? Then it would be like that. So I think for me, that's what he was represented. Like, so either they leave that behind or stay. And I liked him personally. I just enjoyed his character quite a bit. So you would just have preferred it was just an all-female kind of thing, and why have a man surrogate in there?
I'm just not sure what the point was other than not all men. And I'm not sure it needed that. I didn't have a problem with it being there, though. It certainly didn't hurt the film in any large way for me. It was just every time they were discussing that, I was like, this is not the part that's all that interesting to me. But maybe it would be for other people, and there's multiple things for multiple people in here. So Go ahead, Kyle.
I read that his character was the original narrator of the movie. So it would have been women talking narrated by the one male character.
Right.
And then at some point, I don't know if they recorded it or whatever. At some point, Sarah Polley thought, oh, actually, this would be better if we had maybe one of the daughters who was narrating to an unknown child of the future. And would that be more powerful? Which I think that was the right decision to make. I think it would have been odd if this movie was called Women Talking and the predominant voice we heard was a male narrator.
Sure. Also, like the title, this is so silly, but I think it would be cool if there was no dudes, period. It was all women talking. It kind of feels like a violation of the title. But I get it. The movie's about the women talking, and he barely talks in it, and he gets yelled at a couple times for talking. So
there are times when they said you're here to listen, not to contribute.
Right. I'm fine with it, like I said, but I also think it would have been cool if there literally was no men, and the way they talk about the men is like they're off doing their thing, and we have to come to a conclusion before they get back, or else, this is never going to end, type of thing. And I'm not sure what his purpose was other than the not all men thing. But although it was kind of interesting that they say that his family left the church.
They were excommunicated.
Sure. I was going to leave that out, but you said it. And then he comes back and he has a different perspective than what we assume most of the men in that community have. And that, that's kind of what happens with super controlling religions, right? A lot of times people get out of it and they make realizations when they see a different way of living. And that he would be kind of the one enlightened man that the movie presents to us. Might have been more interesting if it wasn't somebody who was excommunicated, if it was literally somebody in the community that did have a good perspective. And didn't go with the men to go help. But I don't know. Doesn't really matter in the long run.
I really like how James is just working out the Ben Whishaw character live on air here. He's like, well, what about this? Well, what about that? And I'm here for that conversation, James.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure the people who made this did the exact same thing and decided it was worthy of being included. Again, I'm fine with it. Other than the pedanticness of making sure the title was true. That's really my biggest issue, to be honest. Everything else I can put aside. But if you're going to call women talking, I only want women talking.
Would you prefer they call this movie Women, parentheses, and a man, and parentheses, talking?
And one man.
Talking. And one man?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, women talking and one man listening. That's what I want.
James hates The Godfather because there's more than one character in it.
I know.
It's not just Marlon Brando on screen.
Sure.
If the mission's impossible, why do they keep pulling it off? I don't get it.
Why do they keep doing it?
Exactly.
I don't understand why they do these things. I mean, why name something?
Why James loves James Bond. It's very clear. It's James Bond.
I only want literal titles.
Yeah. 12 Angry Men, but like two guys seemed fine. They were just
right.
They were that angry.
Yeah.
I don't want
It's
any
really one angry guy.
Any interpretation. I want the plot in the title, or else I'm not into it.
One angry guy and 11 malleable listeners.
You got it. Exactly. Anything else with this movie? I don't think we need a spoiler discussion, right?
No, I don't think so.
No, we don't have to decide.
Right.
We don't have to say what they decide.
Mm-hmm.
There's one character that I was surprised was included in the film. I didn't really understand exactly what they're trying to say because it seemed like it was the one thing that didn't fit in this community necessarily. Do you know which character I'm talking about, first of all? Is that a spoiler to talk about?
Are you talking about the farmhand?
Yes.
The farmhand.
The farmhand that didn't speak very much. She almost
only
never
spoke to children.
Oh, yeah. That character, I agree, seemed a little out of place.
Well, I was just surprised that it was included because it just seemed out of place in this community.
Mm-hmm.
I actually enjoyed the character's role in the story. I don't know. I don't know how much to say because I don't know if that might be spoiler to talk about it openly. But I just curious if you guys had any thoughts about like, did I miss something about like why that was included in the overall message?
No, for me, it didn't bother me that character and that character was included. It did feel a little tacked on of like, we're covering this topic, but we're also going to include a little bit of this other topic that's somewhat related or adjacent to the larger topic. I don't know if it added anything. It didn't hurt the movie, but I don't know if it added much.
And I enjoyed that character.
Yeah.
I'm more curious with the next chapter of that character story.
James, you have anything to weigh in on that?
Well, since that person is who they are, I didn't have a problem with it. I don't know. That's messy. I absolutely didn't have a problem with that. It's also like a very, very small part of the story and not really anything that they're debating at all. I think probably they could have opened more questions of like, I'm dancing around it just because there's not much to spoil in this movie, but that is an interesting thing that I'm not sure we necessarily have to say out loud. But
it added more complexity to the story.
Right.
Yeah, I want to know more about how that community as a whole is dealing with that.
I think what they were saying is that they weren't dealing with it. They're basically just ignoring it in general. You know, they were just
they
were ignoring.
recognize it at the very end.
Right.
Some characters, some characters who had come to some enlightenment were recognizing what was going on. But
and some didn't, yeah.
But I think some in the society were just ignore those types of things.
Right.
As long as you.
All right. Well, if you want to know what we're talking about, you got to see the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even if we told you exactly what it was, you should see the movie. It's the movie. It's not the kind of movie that we could say anything that will ruin the experience of the acting and the presentation and just all the pieces together is what is interesting about this movie more than one plot point over the other, for sure. That being said, let's letterbox this. What'd you guys give it out of 5 stars?
James, before I get to that, I was going to say I'm proud of you for making it through this conversation
without saying something way awkward.
Exactly, without making it awkward. So
I'm trying.
Kudos to you, James.
All right.
James, what are you giving this?
Yeah,
I give it a 5 stars. Other than the title, it's pretty close to perfect for me.
I'm gonna give it a 4.5.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 4.5 because I really liked the acting and the writing. I thought was great.
You're neutral on the directing?
The directing I'm neutral on, and yeah.
I know this is going backwards a little bit, but in 12 Angry Men, there's like certain moments where people go really big and like sometimes the reaction seems bigger than what it needs to be. And this movie does that too. And I think that's probably why it works so well for me. Because there's moments where people are like far too angry compared to how they were a second ago. And some people might consider that overacting, but it absolutely worked for me in this context. So that's why it's
great.
5 and not just probably a 4.5 or a 4 for me. Anyway, 2 4.5s and a 5 for Women Talking. Let's get into our game for this week. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm bringing this one to the table. It's pretty, I literally defined it like 10 minutes before we started recording. So maybe you guys might need to help me with some of the rules here because I haven't fully formed exactly what this game is, but I do have a title for it. It's called the Bechdel Test. All right.
Okay.
Do you know what the Bechdel test is?
Yes.
I'm going to try to define it.
Okay.
And then Zach, you can correct me.
Okay.
So the Bechdel test is a test to see if, I believe it's a movie, but could be any work of fiction. And it passes the test if there are 2 named female characters who have a conversation about something other than a man. Are those the 3 points of the Bechdel test?
Yeah.
And if you have all 3 of those, then you pass the Bechdel test.
According to BechdelTest.com, you're mostly right.
Okay.
The only thing that they differentiate is whether they have to be named characters or not. They just have to be characters. They just have to be characters in a movie that are women.
I think they have to be named. The Bechdel Test website does say they have to be named.
Does not say anything about.
Okay. I always heard that they had to be named female characters.
Nope. According to this website, nope. And that's the website I'm using for this game. So do not assume that they have to be named.
All right. All right.
So all I was going to do was back and forth, give each of you 2 movies. And then you tell me which one passed and which one didn't. We just go back and forth and we'll see. And
Love it.
I believe I can click through. And if you get it wrong, then we'll find out why you got it wrong. Basically.
Perfect. Yeah. Great.
All right. Let's start with Kyle.
Ready.
Which movie passes the Bechdel test? Babylon or Avatar: The Way of Water? One of those does. One of those doesn't.
With Babylon, there's not a lot of female characters compared to Avatar: Way of Water. But I'm going to say that Babylon passes the Bechdel test, where Avatar: Way of Water does not.
That's correct.
Good job.
All right.
You got it right. Zach, which movie passes the Bechdel test? Is it The Banshees of Inisherin? Or is it The Batman?
Okay, that's interesting because I don't remember 2 women having a conversation in either of those films.
I'm gonna change the rules after this round, which means I'm gonna give you a new movie. Okay. Is the movie that passes the Bechdel test The Banshees of Inisherin or Bullet Train?
Okay. All right. Bullet Train. Well, we swapped out a film.
Yeah, but one stayed.
Sure. Now, Banshee's the only female character I remember is the sister. But there was a post office lady and the sister, and they probably talked about some stuff. But she probably asked them about her brother. You know what I mean?
Right. Were they talking about a man? Or were they talking about how she was going to, spoiler alert, leave town or,
Are you helping me? Or?
Wow, this is a lot of help from the host here.
I'm not helping. Trust me, I am not helping.
Possible conversation they could discuss. They could have this conversation.
Not to help you anymore, Zach, but I'm not helping.
What was the other movie?
We talked about Bullet Train and the Banshees of Inisherin.
Bullet Train, there's a woman on the phone, but she's not talking to another woman. There's the girl. I can't remember her talking to any women. So I'm going to say Banshee passes the Bechdel test.
That's correct.
That is correct.
What rule did you change?
So the new rule from now on out is you have several options. You can either pick a movie, or you can say they both pass, or you can say they both fail.
Oh, so it's not one or the other.
And then it'll go to the other person, and they can, if you get it wrong, they'll now have 2 options, maybe 3, depending on whether they have to pick one movie or the other, and they can steal. Zach, can you keep score? Can you keep score on this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
We're tied.
All right, you're tied.
1-1.
Yeah, so it's less of a 50-50 now than it was.
Okay.
Kyle, which of these movies passes the Bechdel test, doesn't pass the Bechdel test, etc.? Bodies, 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 or Bros? Have you seen Bros?
I have not seen Bros.
That's not fair then. Let me give you a
Okay.
different one. Chippendales Rescue Rangers.
Okay. I am confident that Bodies, Bodies, Bodies passes the Bechdel test.
Okay.
So that one is a solid yes. Does Chippendales Rescue Rangers pass the Bechdel test? I don't remember there being a ton of female characters in that movie. So I'm going to say
But who gets kidnapped?
I don't remember. This is a movie I've so clearly forgotten.
You've blocked it from your memory.
Does Gizmo get kidnapped?
It was traumatic. So you.
Who's Gizmo?
Who's the girl from the
Gadget?
Gadget? Sorry, not Gadget. Does Gadget get kidnapped?
Oh, I can't help you.
I don't remember. Is Jenny Slate in that movie?
I don't remember.
Okay, I so thoroughly. I probably do better on Bros, to be honest. I'm gonna say that Chippendales does not pass the Bechdel test, but Bodies, Bodies, Bodies does.
You say Bodies, Bodies does. Chippendales does not.
Correct.
No.
That's incorrect,
okay.
Kyle.
I think that they both pass the Bechdel test.
That's correct.
Both of them pass. Both of them pass.
Can you click through Chippendales and does it say how it passes?
Sure. Here we go. I believe it does. I haven't actually clicked. So there are at least 3 female characters. Gadget and Ellie talk to each other about laughing at bad jokes. So that was a conversation they had.
A real feminist movie.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think that's the thing about the Bechdel test is people, at first were like, does it pass this test? But there's nothing about the content of the conversation besides it cannot be about a man. So it could be about anything else. It could be 2 women talking about makeup.
Right.
Right. And
What's wrong with them talking about makeup?
Test. No, I'm just saying like it could be 2 women talking about stereotypical feminine things.
Sure. I think what the Bechdel test means to me is like the bar is so low.
Right.
This is the one test we've agreed on.
Yeah. like I'm saying it could be 2 women having a discussion of inconsequence, like bad jokes.
Sure.
But the bar is so low that, hey, it's better than them talking about a man. So let's say it passes.
The like male version of the Bechdel test, every movie would pass pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Zach, which movie passes or doesn't pass the Bechdel test? Emily the Criminal and Elvis.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm intentionally doing movies that should be fairly fresh. You know what I mean? Like
Yes,
these are
yeah.
last year
No,
movies.
that's
so
fun. I think that's fun.
Thoughtful.
I'm hoping it gives you a decent shot compared to asking you questions about movies from the 80s that you've forgotten.
No, I love it. I love it. I'm on board. I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking Emily the Criminal passes the Bechdel test.
You think?
Does Elvis? And I'm going to say Elvis does not.
You say
Emily does, Elvis does not.
Emily does, Elvis doesn't.
That's correct.
You're correct.
Nice.
Good job. 1 point for you. Kyle, here's a difficult one. What about Don't Worry, Darling and Glass Onion : I'm not going to read the rest because it's disrespectful to Ryan Johnson. So just Glass Onion.
So just Glass Onion : nothing
Just
else.
Glass Onion : He doesn't like the Knives Out part. We're leaving that. In fact, it should be Glass Onion : a mystery.
A Benoit Blanc mystery, if you're going to do anything
No,
with that.
he never said that.
Yeah.
He just doesn't like the Knives Out part. So we'll leave that part out.
James just wants all the movies to be like women talking, a drama.
with another
Terminator 2
with a guy in it.
in action with a guy. All right,
All right.
so what about movies? Glass Onion or
Don't Worry, Darling.
Don't Worry, Darling.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, because Don't Worry, Darling is so much about the men
Mm-hmm.
of the community. I want to say that does not pass the Bechdel test. Whereas Glass Onion probably does, but that's I'm gonna say Glass Onion does, just because it could be anything like two women talk about bad jokes. So we're gonna say Glass Onion passes, and Don't Worry, Darling does not pass, knowing that they could both fail. I'm not sure. So that's my final guess.
Final answer.
No.
Mm-hmm. I feel like these are just guessing
wrong.
now. Like it's really hard to
I think that neither of them pass. But I haven't seen Don't Give Up, Darling, or whatever that's called.
Don't Worry, Darling.
Don't Worry,
Yeah,
Darling.
I haven't seen that, but I'm going to say that neither of them passed the Bechdel test.
I'll say you Don't Worry, Darling is nothing you have to prioritize for sure. For my money. Kyle might disagree, but
I don't think it's not worth the hype. I also don't think it's as bad as the hype either.
I'll agree
It's
with
pretty
that.
in the middle.
I'll agree with that. So Zach,
it's shot interestingly.
you're sticking with neither of them pass.
Neither of them passed.
No.
They both pass.
They both pass.
They both pass. Yep. You want to know
Sweet.
why? You want to know why, or move on? What do you think?
We can move on.
We're gonna move on. Kyle, what
This
about
back to Zach?
Zach? Let me find some movies you saw from recently. What about the movie Jurassic World Dominion and
Okay.
The Lost City? Which of those passed
Oh.
or didn't pass the Bechdel
Lost
test?
City. I'll say Jurassic did, Lost City did not.
You say Jurassic did, Lost City did not.
No.
No, you're 100% wrong.
I'm
or
gonna say
maybe 50% wrong. I'm
Thanks,
not
James.
saying for
Thank-
sure whether you're 50%
yeah,
or
sure
100% wrong.
Yeah, sure not.
I'm gonna
Kyle?
say they both do, because I'm sure Bryce Dallas Howard and Laura Dern have a science conversation.
Okay.
And in Lost City, Sandra Bullock and her publicist, whoever's on the phone, probably have another non-male related conversation. So I'm gonna say they both pass.
You say they both pass.
Yeah.
That's correct.
That's correct, with a little bit of assistance from me on accident. But you did have reasoning, so I'll accept it because I think
Love
there
it.
I think there
Love
was
it.
some reasoning to it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Zach, what about the
Back to me.
movie? Yeah, Kyle, what about the movie
Like you said, Kyle.
Lightyear?
Okay.
Disney Pixar's Lightyear, and also the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Everything Everywhere All at Once for sure passes.
You think?
Oh yeah, there's that scene where Michelle Yeoh and her daughter are talking about how much her daughter can't stand being around her mom. It's like the emotional climax at the end of the movie. So I am.
Alert.
Well, I mean, there's so much. It's an impossible movie to spoil. Anyway,
You just said exactly how it ends emotionally.
no, it's the emotional climax, but everything that's happening around that moment is what makes it the emotional climax.
All right, fair enough.
Okay. Anyway, so that for sure passes, and then Lightyear. Lightyear does have the woman who's his partner who ages. I'm going to say they both pass.
You say they both pass. Final
Yes.
answer?
Final answer.
No.
No,
Mm-hmm.
they don't.
I think Everything Everywhere passes, but Lightyear does not.
Zach says Lightyear. There's no women that have a conversation other than about a man.
That's what I'm thinking.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Lightyear.
Nice.
Very sexist movie. Kyle.
Back to Zach.
Back to
Zach.
me. Yeah.
The movies you have been tasked to pick from are The Menu and also Prey.
I haven't seen Prey.
Oh, let me give you a different one. I thought you talked about that one with us. I guess not.
No?
How about RRR?
Okay, interesting. The Menu, there is a fight scene between two women. They're the only ones in the room. But they may be talking about the head chef. Or they might just not mention him.
Okay.
I'm going to say neither of them passed the Bechdel test.
You say neither of them or neither pass the Bechdel test.
That's what I'm saying.
No.
You're wrong,
Okay.
Kyle.
I
This is all about
believe-
you guys stealing points from each other for the most
Right,
part.
for sure. I actually think that RRR does pass the Bechdel test.
Okay.
Just based on the very beginning of the movie.
But what about The Menu?
The Menu, I think it would, because you just would have the Anya Taylor-Joy and the, what's her, Elaine Chow? Can't think of her
I
actress's
don't
name.
remember.
Okay. Discussing the food. So it's maybe food related, but not chef related. So I'm going to say they both pass.
You say they both pass.
Yes.
It's our first shutout.
No.
Nope. The Menu
Okay, wait.
passes. So Zach was right about that. And RRR does not pass. That movie's
What
all
about-
about the men.
Okay, but at the very beginning, maybe I guess they don't have a conversation, but there is like the evil British woman who is talking about like the skills of the young Indian girl. And that's what leads to the whole movie happening in the first place.
But who is she talking about that with?
I thought she was talking about it with the girl, but maybe because of the language barrier, they aren't actually discussing it with each other.
Hmm.
Like if there was any moment that movie passed the Bechdel test, it would be in those first 5 minutes. For the rest of the movie, not happening for sure.
I don't know. I mean, I guess you need to rewatch it and correct the website. If,
No, it's, you know what? We are going based on your ill-researched website, and I know how that is. So we can.
I think maybe your memory's wrong, but
No, it very well could be. I'm just saying, if there was a moment, it would be at the very beginning. Because I agree.
where
the
two
other-
women are having this discussion.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean,
I'm not sure that movie
even
even has a scene where two women are talking in it together.
That's why I'm trying to remember if they're talking or not, or if it's just a woman praising the work of this girl just to another man or to the general public.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't remember about the very beginning of that 3-hour long movie.
Right. And the beginning is the least interesting part of the movie.
For sure.
It's just what kicks off the events of everything else. So, yeah. All right. I'll take the L on that one.
Who are we on? Kyle?
Yes. Back to me.
Kyle. Did we start with Kyle?
We did.
Okay. We'll do one more for each of you.
Okay.
Kyle. This one is animation themed. Which of these passes the Bechdel test? The Sea Beast and Strange World.
Ooh, I've seen both of those. I liked both of those. The Sea Beast and Strange World. I do not think the Sea Beast passes the Bechdel test, because I can't think of a ton of female characters in that movie. And if they were, would they be talking to each other? So I'm going to say Sea Beast is no. And Strange World, though I can't remember a specific point. It seems like it would. But I would also be surprised if it. I'm 50-50 on Strange World. I'm going to say that it does pass, but that Sea Beast does not.
Sea Beast, not passing. Strange World passes.
Correct. Yes.
No.
Okay.
You're wrong.
Okay.
Zach, having not seen either of these.
Either, yeah. I'll say neither of them pass.
You say neither of them pass. Another shutout.
No.
They both pass.
They both pass.
They both pass. Yep.
Okay.
I recently watched Sea Beast, and that movie is so much fun. I don't like. I know you liked it, Kyle, and you mentioned it a couple times over the course of the year that you liked it. I should have watched it a lot sooner because I was like, this. It's been a while since I watched an animated film where I was like, this has no value other than just being really fun to watch. You know what I mean? It's like it's really well made, but there's nothing super clever or high concept about it. It's just fun. And I really enjoyed it.
It's How to Train Your Dragon with sea beasts.
Right. And like just a fun pirate story. And you just don't get much of that.
Characters are fun.
Yeah, you don't get much of that in media, like pirates being the appropriate level of silly and interesting and dangerous, but also it's a kids movie, so it doesn't get too grim. Yeah, I liked it a lot. Zach, your final opportunity for points. I'm going to give you 2 movies. These are movies I know you've seen. The question is, did they pass the Bechdel test? One of them is titled 13 Lives. I hope you watched that. Did you watch that about the cave?
No idea I've never even heard of that movie.
It's the Thai cave rescue movie. But the
Ron
Howard
no, I haven't seen that.
Okay.
You
haven't seen that.
Okay, I couldn't remember if you had seen that.
That's fine. That's fine.
You did. No, it's too easy. I'm going to give you different ones anyway. How about
it's too easy.
How about the movie? Oh, this is good. How about the movie Sonic the Hedgehog 2?
Okay.
And Tar. Does Tar or Sonic the Hedgehog 2 pass the Bechdel test or no?
I think, my gut would tell me Tar does pass, right? She has a female assistant. They have lots of conversations. But then James was like, oh, this is good. When he found Tar, and he's like, oh, because he would assume Tar would, but it doesn't. There was that conversation she had initially with that woman at a party they were hitting on, and she like gave her number. And I think they were just talking about music at that point. I'm going to say Tar passes, even though James is giving every indication that it does not. And he finds that hilarious.
I don't think I'm stone-faced. I'm not giving any indication whatsoever.
Agreed. You're stone-faced.
Absolutely.
The other movie you mentioned, Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Yeah, tell me what you remember of Sonic the Hedgehog
Electric
2.
Boogaloo.
Electric Boogaloo.
I remember nothing from Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Shocking.
But I assume...
You know what happens when people assume.
Is Tails male or female?
I was wondering the same thing.
I'm not giving you anything. You don't want me to help, so I'm not helping.
Zach, I think, and this is not me trying to trick you, I think Tails is female.
I think Tails is female.
Yeah.
What's Tails' first name? And that's all I'm saying.
Bernadette Tails.
Claire.
You guys don't know what Tails' first name is? Come on.
Does Sonic have a first name?
No, but Tails definitely does.
Well, Sonic has a first name.
Does Knuckles have a first name?
No, but Tails.
What is Tails' first
definitely
name?
Does.
Why does Tails have a first name and all of them just have a one name or are mononyms? There we go.
I couldn't tell you. All I know. Why does Tails have 2 tails and nobody else does?
To helicopter around, obviously.
I'm just saying, there's no
James
rhyme
does
or reason.
Not know Tails' his first name.
100% I do. I'll say it as soon as you get this wrong.
No. You're stalling. He's stalling until he can remember it.
No, I remember it.
Sure you do.
Yeah, no, I believe you, James. Wink.
I'm not searching.
Yeah.
I'm looking
I'll
directly
let
into
you
the
stall-
camera.
yeah,
I will
you're
not
stall-
search.
I'll let you stall long enough so you can mentally think of it.
I will not search. I know it right off the top of my head. I even know his
of
last
course
name.
you do.
Tails has a last name?
Yes, he has 3 names. Tails is
He has 3 names?
a nickname.
His name is Reginald Parks. I'm going to say that. What was this other movie besides
Tar.
Oh, Tar? I'll say
Tar,
they
too.
both pass.
You
Both
say they both
pass.
pass. Sonic the Hedgehog and Tar both pass.
You bet they pass.
That's correct.
Of course they pass. Come on, Tar. They're almost never talking about a man, and she's constantly talking to women through the movie.
The only reason I thought maybe Tar wouldn't pass is because she's always talking about male composers, and does that count?
But it only takes
Yeah.
one scene to pass.
I
And there's
know.
plenty of scenes in Tar where they are not talking about a man, where women are not
Right.
talking about a man. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 also passes. Couldn't tell you where, but absolutely Tar passes 100%.
Okay. I would like Tails' full Christian name, please.
Tails' name, if you don't want it, Tails is his nickname, so I'm going to leave that out of it. His first name and his last name are Miles Prower. Miles Prower, Prower, like miles per hour if you say it too fast. That's why I remember it, and that's why it's his name.
Why isn't Sonic's name miles per hour?
That's correct.
Why
Please
isn't
correct yourself?
I did because I was correct. I don't know why nobody else has a name, but I do
'Cause I
know
don't-
Miles does.
I wouldn't describe Tails as being a fast character.
So the question was, is Tails a girl or a boy? I'm assuming boy based on the name, Miles.
Well, it's quite the assumption.
Gender is
to make.
listed as male on Wikipedia.
There you go.
Okay.
So, well,
I always like Tails way better than Sonic.
Because of the little helicopter flying,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the color.
the orange. Is
I
it
like
because
the
it's
color.
more fox-like and it reminds you of Robin Hood? And everything goes back to Robin Hood?
Possibly.
Okay.
That's possible. But I think it's a more pleasant color.
fair enough.
Sonic's power is like he can like spin really fast, but like he'll spin really fast even when he's not running fast. And then it's like annoying that he's spinning. You're like, stop spinning. But once he starts spinning, you can't stop him until he lands.
Are you saying like once he gets going, you can't just like stop on a dime?
No. I'm saying when he's spinning but not running. Like
when
sometimes he'll just jump spinning.
Mm-hmm.
not when he's like spinning in spot, like in place, revving up. You're talking about
No, yeah.
Okay.
Completely unconnected to the running ability of Sonic
Okay.
is also this ability to just spin in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And he could jump like that, or he can spin in place, but not like revving up, just
I got you.
spin.
Okay.
And I find it annoying.
I found Sonic sometimes you would like get running and you run just fast enough to spin, but not spin fast enough to actually go anywhere. So you kind of do like half a loop because you get enough speed going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would happen.
All right.
Riveting conversation we've got.
I
going.
know. Tell me how many points Zach beat me by.
Zach, what's the score?
Final score: Kyle 2,
Mm-hmm.
Zach 5.
5.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice. Other than the first round, did anybody get it on the first one, or was it always the person following up?
I didn't keep track of that differential, but I think that I got it twice. I believe I got it twice.
On the last one you did.
Yeah.
That's true.
So maybe, yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you both for playing the Bechdel test. I think you both did fairly well. I mean, it's hard to know, right? When the bar is one conversation in a roughly 2-hour film, did they or did they not talk about a man? It's hard to search. It's hard to have a perfect memory on that. For sure.
You're not going to call this game Women Talking?
We could.
Or
Are we ever
men
going to play
talking,
this
women
again?
talking?
I'm not sure
Look
we're
Who's
ever.
Talking?
I'm not sure we're ever going to play this game again. Because women talking is basically the opposite of this, right? Like the whole movie is women talking about men.
But I'm sure they have a conversation. I bet Women Talking passes the Bechdel test.
I don't know, but put it in. Find out.
Women talking is not on the website.
Uh
We could let's ask Chat GPT. Oh wait, they don't.
It's
They don't
never
have
heard of that
Yeah,
movie.
they don't have access to the internet. All right, we'll go Google. Ugh.
Ask Sydney.
Sydney.
Is that Bing's?
That's Bing's. Yeah.
I don't have access to that. Do you?
I got access today, but it's not working.
Why is Microsoft so terrible at naming things? Like
No,
Bing.
it's not called Sydney to the public.
Oh, okay.
That's the,
But that's its private name that like people have figured out by like, forcing it to tell them things it's not supposed to tell them.
Like, what's your name?
Yeah.
Okay, that seems a pretty simple question to ask.
I think it. Yeah.
according
But
according to Sarah Polly, it passes the Bechdel test.
Okay, I would like someone who's not the writer director to weigh in on this movie.
I'm just
you don't trust a woman to tell you?
Yeah, is there a man who's verified this yet?
That's awful.
Sorry.
I love it though. Thank you for listening to this episode 572 of the Cinereelists. We appreciate your listenership. Don't forget, find the video version on YouTube. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists. Leave us an Apple Podcast review or send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. We appreciate all input via those methods. You can also leave a YouTube comment. Last episode, we discussed YouTube comments openly and honestly on the podcast, and it was kind of fun. So if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to leave us a comment, we'll probably not reply to it there, but just talk about it on the podcast on a future episode, which could be interesting. Don't want to miss out on that. Also, you can follow us on social media at Cinereelists on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. You can follow me on my personal Letterboxd or Twitter account at YoJRB.
You can follow me on Twitter or Letterboxd at Shopping.
Find me on Letterboxd at Peter SKB.
Next week, we will be discussing the film The Whale, which is out on video on demand. And the Oscars are Sunday night. So next week, the episode will probably come out like Tuesday-ish, and we'll be recapping the Oscars. And I doubt it'll be as eventful as last year on an international level, but it'll still be fun to talk about. There's always something, right? Some kind of controversy. Do you think there will be any controversy? Here's the question. Will they reference what happened last year?
Yes.
Like, scripted or unscripted?
Scripted. Planned.
Scripted, I'm going to say no, but unscripted, possibly.
You think somebody who's won their award is going to go up there and make reference to something that happened last year? I don't know if that.
I think it's possible. Yeah.
I wouldn't waste my speech time on that.
Yeah. If, some people want to get a good joke in, they think, or.
Hopefully the documentary feature.
I think a presenter or the host, who is Jimmy Kimmel, will reference it.
They have a host this year.
They do. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, Jimmy Kimmel will probably make some good thing. I don't know. He'll say something like, is Will Smith in the front row or something like that?
Sure. He'll make some very obvious, unfunny joke about it.
Is Will Smith going to be there?
He's been banned for a decade.
He's
10
banned
years.
For attending.
Okay.
He can still be nominated. He can still win, but he can't attend the ceremony.
Was he nominated for Emancipation?
No.
Okay.
I watched that movie and it's not bad, but also not Oscar worthy for sure.
So
I think
it's not like it was an Oscar worthy performance, but he's still in Oscar jail.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Personally, I don't think it would have happened even if he was in good graces with most of the voting Oscar public. So so look forward to that next week. We'll see you guys there. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.